All right, here we go. You're watching Philadelphia 76ers now. I'm Chase Sr. No matter where you are, how you're tuned in, I appreciate you for making today's show a part of your day. Hope you're all having a phenomenal weekend, having a blast on this beautiful Sunday, and there is plenty to get into here on this show. And that's why I'm coming at you from the at-home studio. Was supposed to be off today, but there's so much buzz. There's so much conversation. There are so many rumors hovering around this basketball team going into what is arguably the most pivotal, most important, and biggest offseason for this team. I just had to turn on the camera, hop in front of the mic, and relay some thoughts and information to all of our loyal subscribers. Speaking of our subscribers, we are closing in on 15,000 here on 76ers now. Make sure you hit that sub button. We give you informative, entertaining, insightful Sixers coverage year-round that is free. We did watch parties for all of the playoff games. We're going to start doing some live shows throughout this massive offseason. Anytime there's a report, anytime there's a rumor, anytime we want to talk ball, pass along some opinions and analysis, and involve you, the fan, we do that right here on the channel. So make sure you hit that sub button, your one-stop shop and your home for the best Sixers offseason coverage. So Sixers rumors, they're hot right now after Philadelphia exited early in the NBA playoffs once again, and now the Sixers entering what is just a pivotal offseason for this team. And as compared to previous years when I've been down, out, sad, depressed after a heartbreaking second round or first round defeat, which is what I've been accustomed to feeling and knowing as a Sixers fan in my 32 years of existence, Philadelphia loses Game 6. It was a rough loss. I thought they should have beat the New York Knicks. There were so many opportunities on the table for them to punch their ticket to the second round, which would have catapulted them up against a Cleveland Cavaliers team that I think is completely beatable. Everything fell in line for Philadelphia, but when you get out-rebounded, when you get out-hustled, when you get out-executed down the stretch against a well-coached team that has a star player in Jalen Brunson, and you miss out on some of the small necessary things that are critical to winning a basketball game, and when the whistle doesn't always go your way, Game 2, Game 6 against Tyrese Maxey, you're going to get sent home packing when you're playing a quality team. But now going into the offseason, you have Tyrese Maxey, who's a bona fide young star in this league. Joel Embiid, despite having some bad fourth quarters, being bad in Game 5, even though he still had a triple-double, almost a quadruple-double, with those 9 turnovers, you feel good about him if he can stay healthy. But the numbers that he put up in this first-round series against the Knicks were phenomenal, well over 30 points per game. He was tremendous. He was gutting it out, displaying a lot of toughness and resiliency. Even when he didn't have it going offensively, he was still a force defensively. Even in that bad Game 5 down the stretch in overtime, how about the defensive sequences that he was able to have in protecting the paint, recovering after getting beat off the dribble, couple of blocks, plays that don't show up on the stat sheet, altering shots around the rim, and then a couple of big buckets down the stretch too. And then in Game 6, he emptied the tank. He was great before fouling out. It just wasn't enough. But you have Maxey, you have Embiid, you have an elite coach in Nick Nurse, where, let me say this, if the Sixers went down 2-0 to the Knicks with Glenn Rivers as their coach, 1-2-3 Cancun a lot earlier than in Game 6. The Sixers this year had to deal with a lot of adversity. They displayed a lot of mental toughness. This is a group that didn't play a lot together because of the injury to Embiid, yet we saw moments of what they could have become, and we saw a lot of potential. We saw adjustments. Nick Nurse is a tactician, and I feel good about that nucleus of Maxey, Embiid, Nurse going into this offseason. Now you have an opportunity to stack up this roster, build up some depth. You could add another star if you wanted to, because the 76ers offseason profile, it's fascinating. A projected $60 million in cap space. You could free up about $8 million more if you decline the contract and the option for Paul Reed, who, since the Sixers didn't make it to the second round, his contract is now guaranteed. Might be smart to do that. His development hasn't taken off like I thought it could have. He was a little bit of a liability. And could that money be used elsewhere? Either way, right now, $60 million in cap space. You have 2 picks coming up in the 2024 NBA draft. Pretty solid value here. 16th overall pick, 41st pick. Do not tell me that a 16th overall pick and a 41st overall pick can't help you. First of all, Tyrese Maxey was drafted in the 20s. Franchise-altering move. And then you look at the New York Knicks. Jalen Brunson was drafted in the second round. He's a star. Two-time National Player of the Year at Villanova, or one-time National Player of the Year, two-time champion. Dante DiVincenzo was their highest drafted significant contributor on that team. He got drafted late in the first round. Josh Hart, OG Anunoby, Mitchell Robinson, Isaiah Hartenstein. Hartenstein, a second-round pick. The point here being, you can get some impact players at 16 and 41, or you can use those picks at your disposal in a trade to send to another team. You also have future first-round picks in the chamber, too, from that James Harden trade. You can use that to your advantage for yourself, or using those picks in a trade to land a marquee superstar. And in speaking of superstars, that brings me to the next part of the show. The reporting from the likes of Brian Windhorst and Zach Lowe that Daryl Morey and Philadelphia once again going to be star hunting. And I know that everybody's having the conversation, has the process been a failure? Up to this point, they haven't made it past the second round. They did get Joel Embiid. That's a win. They haven't achieved ultimate success like you would hope. And a lot of people are blaming Daryl Morey for that. Has he done a great job of maximizing Joel Embiid's prime? No. Is it all his fault? No. He had to get rid of Ben Simmons. He had to get rid of James Harden. He got rid of some other bad contracts. But look, now there's no wiggle room for Daryl Morey. Now is the time to strike with the iron hot, make Philadelphia a desirable destination, build this team up, and win a damn championship. At the very least, please, for the life of me, get past the second round. And now you have the opportunity to do that. According to Brian Windhorst, ESPN, the player at the top of their list is Paul George. I know some people have cooled on Paul George. Let me tell you why Paul George makes sense. He's older. You'd have to give him a max. Risky because he's injured too. But my goodness, can you imagine what this series would have looked like if Paul George, an elite wing defender, is guarding Jalen Brunson? Can you imagine what the offense would have looked like having Paul George over Tobias Harris, who in classic Tobias Harris fashion went 0 of 2, had no points in Game 6 after a good Game 5? That's $36 million right there. Paul George over Tobias Harris, worth somewhere in the neighborhood of the same price range. Massive upgrade. He can make any shot on the floor. He can make difficult contested shots. I think that he'd be a good fit alongside Maxey and Embiid because he's not going to overly demand and prioritize the ball and kill offensive possessions like a James Harden, who, by the way, came up short in another big playoff series. I could see why Paul George makes sense. The long-term investment, again, risky. But you're trying to win a championship over the next year to 3. That's your realistic window here. According to Windy, 76ers also going to monitor the situations of Jimmy Butler and Brandon Ingram. Jimmy Butler is another player who I think fits in well alongside Tyrese Maxey and Joel Embiid. The issue with him, does not care about the regular season at all, doesn't really do a ton off ball, is also aging and has an injury history, is going to cost a lot. But if you have Jimmy Butler in that first round series against the Knicks, I just don't see how you lose it. Maxey, Butler, Embiid. Butler can still be a player to defend Jalen Brunson. Imagine him taking the offensive role of a Tobias Harris. Now, the issue with Butler, he's a little bit more ball-centric. He's going to try to hunt for a shot more compared to Paul George. But the defensive tenacity, the overall tenacity, him being an uber competitor, him being a cold-blooded killer and assassin, having that to his playoff resume, extremely intriguing. Tobias Harris over me, Philadelphia could rectify that and bring in Butler. The issue with him as compared to George is that you have to trade for him. And does he want out of Miami? It's a great basketball situation. Clip of Butler going viral over the weekend. He said, if I was playing, the Celtics are home. The Knicks definitely aren't advancing. That's the kind of player I'd like. Plus, he's close with Embiid. Can he bring the best out of him? Also just taps into the city identity perfectly. Then there's Brandon Ingram, who is the younger of the two players in George and Butler, who we've seen have very high-level production. Slender athlete, can smoothly get to his shot anywhere on the floor. We've seen him have a lot of production. He's 26 years old. You'd also need the trade for him, but he got benched in the play-in tournament game against the Lakers. His playing time down the stretch was somewhat up and down. Now, this year for New Orleans, 21 points per game, 5+ rebounds, 4+ assists. Not a bad defensive player when engaged, but sometimes that's an issue. 49% from the floor, 36% from three. Not good. Now, the year before that, 2022-2023, almost 25 points per game, 48% from the floor, 39% from three. Year before that, 32.7. Year before that, 38.1, 39.1. So certainly up and down as a three-point shooter, but a player who in his last 5 years has averaged at least 20 points per game. And his career numbers right now, 19 on 47% shooting, 36% from three. What I worry about Ingram is the personality fit. You know, he's a little bit passive. He's a little bit silent. He's a player who can lose confidence. And we just saw what happened with Tobias Harris, who is a great guy. He's going to go to the Pistons. He's going to average 20 points on 45 and 40 shooting. And is always a durable player who's consistently available. It's all great. Good captain, good team leader. Just wasn't made for Philadelphia. The pressure got to him. And if Ingram playing alongside a ball-centric Maxey and a ball-centric Embiid is just kind of hovering around the three-point arc, does he lose that level of being engaged? Does he struggle with being that third option where he doesn't have the ball like he's accustomed to having it? And does he struggle? And then does he lose his confidence? Philadelphia gets on him, they boo him, and he's cooked. That's an issue. Now, the trade for him might not cost as much as Jimmy Butler, even though Jimmy Butler has the age that he does. But those names are certainly interesting. You have to throw LeBron in there from a basketball fit. If you're trying to win a title over the next 2 years, I think LeBron James is the best fit out of all of those players. A little bit older, but look, people want to say, LeBron James, he's 39, he's washed. He literally just had one of the best years of his career. No joke. And this is a player who knows what it takes, who's a good leader, who's a floor general, who still has an offensive game, a defensive game, and gives you that championship pedigree and leadership that you might desperately need. He can afford to miss some time when Embiid goes out. He can be that number 2 to Maxey. He can be the number 1, and Maxey is the number 2. It gives you a bunch of lineup versatility. He can bring the ball up. He can play in the post. He can spread the floor. LeBron's numbers this year, 26.7 points per game, 54% shooting, 41% from three, and that came on 5.1 attempts from distance. That 41% from three is a career high for him at 39 years old. 54% shooting is right up there among some of the best years that he's had in his career. And then his career averages 27, 7.5, 7.4. This year he was 25.7, 7.3, and 8.3. Still gave you more than a steal per night, a half block. Is so good. Still. Now, Father Time is undefeated. It could hit him, and an injury could happen, and he could be done for, and he's 39 years old. He's going to be 40 in December. I get it. But that's one of those all-in moves where that's for the next year or two, and that's it. And as much as that could lift you to the promised land, it could set you back as much. But I think for a player like LeBron or Paul George or Jimmy Butler, any of these star players out there, maybe Klay Thompson, although I might stay away from that. The shooting is appealing because if you put him in the place of Tobias Harris, you got to imagine he's going to be more productive and get open looks. And if you bring in a third star, do you want them to take the ball away from Maxey? That's an issue with this big three. Why I love what the Mavericks are doing right now. It's a two-man punch. Kyrie, Luka, dominant, Nuggets, Jamal Murray, Nikola Jokic, T-Wolves, Anthony Edwards, and then others. Sometimes it's Cat, Game 1, Naz Reid, Sixth Man of the Year. But sometimes it gets oversaturated when you have three players as compared to two. So that's the issue. And then there's this from Zach Lowe of ESPN. Daryl Morey will be among, quote, the vultures circling the Phoenix Suns about possibly trading for Kevin Durant this offseason. Daryl Morey at the deadline looked into KD, looked into LeBron. And Zach Lowe said, quote, I'll tell you this, knowing Daryl Morey, he'll call about Durant. The vultures will circle Phoenix. He'll be a vulture. Kevin Durant at this stage of his career, I think also a good fit. It's unfortunate that Philadelphia is entering this massive offseason and they have all this cap space, but the marquee free agents are all past their prime. So that kind of sucks. But another strategy here is, do we just build around Maxey and Embiid, and do we fortify the team outside of that? Now, I would love a Mikal Bridges. Two-way player. Isn't going to dominate the ball. Great growth. Villanova championship pedigree. We saw how that benefited the New York Knicks. Could you trade for him? That might be one of my number one options. If you don't land a star, I'd like to see Kyle Lowry back. I'd like to see Campaign back. Those two and Maxey, that's a good backcourt. That was proven. And I do think Embiid has a point to make with some of the continuity that he's looking for. Every year it's been a different team. Kelly Oubre, athletic wing, can get it done on both ends. We saw him kind of grow up as the series progressed because he had no playoff experience. He was definitely better the last 3 games as compared to the first 2 or 3. I'd like to see him back. Nick Batum, floor spacer, big, has played in a lot of big NBA games, was not fazed by the moment in the play-in tournament game against the Heat, popped off, guarded Jalen Brunson, valiant effort, has played in big international games for France, will play in the Olympics. That's a dude that's just a hooper. And Joel Embiid would like to see him back. So as far as depth pieces go, if you can bring back Batum, Oubre, Lowry, Payne, I love that bench right there. Then you try to get that third marquee player, whether it be a superstar or kind of a tier 2 stud who's a borderline all-star who's better than Tobias Harris. You have something, man. You have something for the first time in a long time. And if you have some continuity, does that help you out as well with an elite coach in Nick Nurse? So just a huge offseason coming for Philadelphia. I can't wait for it. And these reports only going to start because Philadelphia's going to be players. There's no doubt about that. Don't forget to subscribe. I'm Chase Sr. This is 76ers Now. Have a good rest of your weekend. We'll see you tomorrow on Monday with more content.